You're waiting. Right now, this very second, you're waiting for someone to tell you it's okay. Permission to start that business, permission to invest, permission to quit the job that's killing you, permission to bet on yourself. And while you're waiting, asking, hoping, someone else just decided. They didn't ask. They didn't wait for perfect conditions or expert approval. They looked at the same information you have, made a decision, and moved. That's the difference. That's the entire game. Employees ask permission. Owners make decisions. And you've been playing the wrong role in your own life for so long, you don't even realize you're doing it anymore. Let me tell you what I've watched destroy more financial futures than market crashes, bad investments, or even catastrophic debt. It's this pathological need for validation before you act. You want your spouse to agree, your parents to approve, your friends to think it's smart, your boss to give you the green light, your accountant to nod, some guru on the internet to confirm your thinking, and while you're collecting opinions like they're lottery tickets, the opportunity evaporates, the market moves, the window closes. Someone else takes the shot you were too scared to take without a committee's blessing. Here's what nobody tells you. Successful people make decisions with incomplete information every single day. They don't have more data than you. They don't have secret knowledge. They're not smarter. They just decided that moving forward with 60% certainty beats standing still with 0% progress. You know what employees do? They wait for the manual. They wait for the training. They wait for someone senior to tell them exactly what steps to take. You know what owners do? They look at a problem, assess the variables they can see, make the best judgment call possible, and adjust as reality unfolds. I've seen people spend 5 years researching the perfect investment strategy and never invest a single dollar. 5 years. They read every book, watched every video, joined every forum, became experts in theory, and stayed broke in practice. Meanwhile, someone else read one book, opened a brokerage account, started investing 15% of their income, and built actual wealth. Not because they were brilliant, because they decided to start with imperfect knowledge wrath, or then wait for perfect understanding that never comes. This isn't about being reckless. This isn't about ignoring good advice or making stupid decisions just to prove you can. This is about recognizing that your need for external validation is a defense mechanism protecting you from responsibility. If everyone agrees with your decision and it fails, you can blame the consensus. If you decide ALO, nay, and it fails, you have to own it completely. That fear of sole responsibility is what keeps you asking permission, and it's what keeps you poor. The mathematics are brutal. Every month you delay a decision is a month of compound interest you'll never recover. Every year you wait for conditions to be perfect is a year of experience, learning, and adjustment you've forfeited. The cost of your HEs. Imitation isn't just the opportunity you missed. It's every subsequent opportunity that would have emerged from taking that first step. You're not just losing today's decision, you're losing the entire chain of decisions that would have followed. You've been trained your entire life to ask permission. School taught you to raise your hand, to wait for the teacher's approval before you speak, before why. Oh, move before you act. Your first job reinforced it. You need authorization for everything. Spending company money, taking time off, making decisions that affect anything beyond your tiny sphere. 20, 30, 40 years of this conditioning. And now you can't make a move without looking over your shoulder for someone to validate your choice. You've internalized the employee mindset so deeply that you're asking permission in areas of your life where you're actually the owner, your personal finances, you're the CEO, your investment decisions, you're the board of directors, your career trajectory, you're the sole shareholder. Nobody else is coming to save you. Nobody else loses when you make bad choices or wins when you make good ones to the degree that you do. This is your enterprise. B. You're running it like you're middle management, waiting for corporate to approve your budget request. I'll tell you exactly what this looks like in dollars. You see an investment opportunity, real estate, stocks, a business, doesn't matter. You spend 3 months talking to people. Your brother-in-law says it's risky. Your coworker says the market's too high. Your father says to wait for a bet. Year time. So you wait. 6 months later, that investment is up 30%. You just lost 30% because you needed consensus from people who have less money than you, less knowledge than you, and zero stake in your outcome. They risked nothing with their opinions. You risked everything by following them. Here's the pattern I've observed for decades. The people asking the most permission make the least money. The people seeking the most validation build the least wealth. It's not correlation, it's causation, because wealth creation requires decisions that look wrong to most people. If everyone agreed it was a good idea, the opportunity would already be arbitraged away. The fact that your cautious friends think you're crazy is often the best signal you've got. Employees optimize FO, our safety and approval. Owners optimize for results and learning. When an employee makes a decision, they're thinking about how to defend it if questioned. When an owner makes a decision, they're thinking about how to execute it effectively. See the difference? One is playing defense before the game even starts. The other is focused on winning. Your financial life will never change until you stop managing it like an employee and start running it like an owner. And owners don't ask permission. They gather information, assess risk, and decide. Let's talk about what your need for validation actually costs in mathematical terms, because this isn't abstract. This is calculable. Let's say you're 30 years old and you've got $10,000 to invest. You know you should invest it. You've read the books. You understand compound interest, but you're not quite sure which index fund. Should it be total market or S&P 500, domestic or international mix? So you ask around, you research, you wait for clarity. 6 months pass, a year passes. You're still gathering opinions, still waiting to feel completely confident. Meanwhile, if you just picked literally any low-cost index fund on day one and invested that $10,000, assuming historical market returns of 10% annually, by the time you're 65, that single decision would be worth $304,000. But you waited a year, so now it's worth $276,000. Your need for perfect information just cost you $28,000. That's the price of 1 year old. Hesitation on one decision with $10,000. Now multiply that pattern across dozens of decisions over decades with hundreds of thousands of dollars. You're not losing thousands. You're losing millions. But here's what really happens. You don't just delay one decision. The permission-seeking pattern compounds negatively just like interest compounds positively. You delay the investment decision for a year. Then you delay increasing your investment rate for 2 more years because you're still not sure you're doing it right. Then you delay starting that side business for 3 years because you want more validation that it'll work. Each delay builds on the previous delay. Each hesitation reinforces the hesitation habit. And the mathematical carnage accumulates silently in the backseat round of your life while you feel responsible and careful and prudent. I've watched this exact pattern destroy financial futures that should have been incredible. Smart people, hardworking people, people who read and research and genuinely try to make good decisions. But they're optimizing for feeling certain rather than making progress. They want zero regret, perfect information, complete consens. Us. And those things don't exist in the real world where wealth gets built. You know what exists? 70% certainty, reasonable risk assessment, and the courage to adjust course when reality provides feedback. That's it. That's the entire game. Decide with incomplete information. Execute, learn, adjust, repeat. Every month you spend seeking permission is a month of compound growth. You're emerging forever. The market doesn't wait for you to feel ready. Opportunity doesn't pause while you build consensus. Time is the only asset you cannot buy back, and you're burning it asking people who aren't you for permission to live your own life. You think you're being intelligent, gathering multiple perspectives, doing due diligence, making informed decisions, and on the surface that's sound. DS, completely reasonable. But here's what's actually happening. You're using research as a socially acceptable form of procrastination. You're using consensus building as protection from the discomfort of personal responsibility. And you're confusing activity with progress. You're busy, you're engaged, you're learning, but you're not moving. I'll show you how this plays out in real life. You want to start a business. So you talk to 10 people. 3 say it's a great idea. 4 say it's risky. 3 say wait until conditions are better. Now what? You've got a split decision. So you talk to 10 more people to break the tie. Same mixed results. So you take a course, read 5 more books, join a mastermind group. 6 months later, you're more knowledgeable and equally stuck. Meanwhile, someone with half your intelligence and a quarter of your preparation just launched, made mistakes, learned from actual customers, and is generating revenue. They're building a real business. You're building a theoretical one. Here's the psychological trap. Seeking advice feels productive. It feels like you're making progress toward your goal. But it's fake progress. It's busy work that protects your ego. Because as long as you're in research mode, you can't fail. You can't be wrong. You can't face the embarrassment of trying something and having it not work. You're perpetually preparing, which means you're perpetually safe from the judgment you're actually afraid of. This isn't wisdom. This is cowardice dressed up as prudence. The people you're asking, they're projecting their own fears onto your situation. Your risk-averse friend tells you it's too risky because they're risk-averse, not because your specific situation is too risky. Your broke family member tells you to play it safe because playing it safe is their default, not because safety is what your financial future requires. Your successful colleague tells you to wait for a better opportunity because they can afford to wait, not Beck. Oz waiting serves you. Everyone's advice is contaminated by their own circumstances, psychology, and limitations, and you're outsourcing your financial future to this polluted data set. You want to know the real secret? Successful people ask for information, not permission. They ask specific questions to fill knowledge gaps. What's the typical conversion rate in this industry? What legal structure did you use? What were the first 3 problems you encountered? They extract data points. Then they make their own decision based on their own risk tolerance, resources, and goals. They don't poll for approval. They gather intelligence and execute. Let me give you 2 people. Same age, same income, same starting capital. Person A is a deliberator. Person B is decisive. Watch what happens over 10 years. Person A sees an investment opportunity, spends 3 months researching, consulting, validating, eventually invests, gets a 15% return because by the time they entered, some momentum was already captured by earlier movers. Person B sees the same opportunity, spends 1 week doing basic due diligence, invests, gets a 22% return because they entered earlier. SE, then percentage points difference. Now multiply that pattern. Person A takes 3 months to decide on every financial move. Person B takes 1 week over 10 years. Person A makes maybe 15 major financial decisions. Person B makes 60. Even if Person B's decisions are slightly lower quality due to less deliberation, they're making 4 times as many learning cycles, 4 times as many cores, corrections, 4 times as many compounding opportunities. Person A is trying to bat 1,000. Person B is trying to get more at-bats. And in wealth building, volume of quality attempts beats perfection seeking every single time. Here's what the math actually looks like. Person A, with their careful approach and 15 decisions, turns $50,000 into $200,000 over 10 years. Solid returns. Nothing wrong with it. Person B, with 60 decisions, makes more mistakes, has more failures, but also has more wins, more learning, and more compound cycles. They turn that same 50,000 into 450,000, not because they're smarter, because they made more decisions. They were in the game more often. They compounded knowledge and capital simultaneously, while person A was still reading the manual. But here's what really separates them: experience. Person A has the experience of 15 decisions. They know 15 things about how markets work, how businesses operate, how investments perform. Person B has the experience of 60 decisions. They've seen more patterns, made more mistakes, developed better instincts, built more resilience. When a opportunity appears, person A is still consulting and researching because they've only done this 15 times. Person B evaluates it in days because they've done it 60 times. The gap doesn't just persist, it widens. You cannot learn to make good decisions without making decisions. You cannot develop judgment without exercising judgment. You cannot build the muscle of discernment by reading about discernment. Every day you delay a decision to gather more information is a day you're not building decision-making competence. And that competence is worth more than any individual decision outcome. The person who makes 100 decisions and gets 70% right will always outperform the person who makes 10 decisions and gets 9% right. Always. The math is undefeated. You know what actually costs you money? It's not the bad decisions. It's the no decisions. I've seen people lose more wealth to paralysis than to mistakes, because a bad decision teaches you something. A non-decision teaches you nothing and costs you time you'll never recover. But you're terrified of being wrong, terrified of looking foolish, terrified of someone saying, "I told you so," so you don't move. And that roar is bankrupting your future while making you feel responsible and careful. Let's say you make an investment and lose 20%. That hurts. That's real money gone. But you learned what doesn't work. You learned about that sector, that strategy, your own risk tolerance. That education is now embedded in your decision-making framework forever. Now let's say you don't invest at all because why? We're afraid of losing 20%. You lose $0 in the short term. But you also gained zero knowledge, made zero progress, built zero experience, and you lost every dollar that investment would have made if it had worked. The opportunity cost of doing nothing is invisible, which makes it psychologically painless. But mathematically, it's devastating. Here's the pattern that kills people. Financially, they avoid decisions to avoid mistakes, but wealth building requires mistakes, requires calibration through failure, requires learning what doesn't work so you can identify what does. Every successful investor I know has a graveyard of bad investments behind them. Every successful business owner has failed projects in their history. Every wealthy person has made decisions that cost money. The difference is they made enough decisions that the winners overwhelmed the losers. They didn't achieve perfection. They achieved profitable imperfection through volume and learning. You were trying to figure out the perfect move before you make any move. But perfect doesn't exist. There is no perfect investment, no perfect business, no perfect timing. There's only good enough in format, ion, reasonable risk assessment, and the willingness to adjust when reality proves you wrong. The people winning financially aren't the ones who never make mistakes. They're the ones who make mistakes faster, learn faster, and adjust faster than everyone else. Speed of learning beats quality of initial decision. Think about what you're actually protecting by not deciding: your ego, your self-image, as someone who makes good choices, your reputation with people whose opinions don't pay your bills. Meanwhile, what are you sacrificing? Your financial future, your learning curve, your compound growth timeline. You're trading decades of potential wealth for temporary comfort of not being wrong. That's not prudence. That's ego management masquerading as financial responsibility. And it's costing why? Everything that matters while preserving nothing that matters. Here's what shifts when you start thinking like an owner instead of an employee in your financial life. Owners don't wait for ideal conditions. They create conditions. Owners don't seek permission for decisions they're responsible for. They seek information, then decide. Owners don't blame markets, timing, or circumstances when GS go wrong. They adjust strategy and move forward. This isn't motivational rhetoric. This is the operational difference between people who build wealth and people who stay stuck regardless of income. An employee mentality in your finances looks like this. I'll invest when I have more money. I'll start that business when the economy improves. I'll make changes when I feel more confident. Notice, teach, E pattern. External conditions must change before internal action occurs. You're waiting for the world to arrange itself favorably before you move. That's an employee waiting for management to create the perfect environment. Owners don't wait. They look at current conditions, identify what's possible now, and execute within constraints. I've watched people with $40,000 salaries build more wealth than people making $200,000, not because of income, because of mentality. The person making $40,000 thinks like an owner. They look at their financial situation and ask, what can I control? I can control my savings rate. I can control my investment consistency. I can control my skill development. I can control my side income efforts. They don't ask permission from circumstances. They make decisions within their circumstances. The person making $200,000 thinks like an employee. They wait for the promotion before they invest more, wait for the bonus before they start the business, wait for retirement before they take control. They're waiting for someone else to improve their situation. The ownership shift is mathematical. When you own a decision, you own the outcome. That ownership creates a feedback loop. You decide to invest, market drops 20%. Employee mentality says the market screwed you. Ownership mentality says, what do I learn from this? Should I have diversified differently? Was my risk assessment accurate? What do I do now? The employee externalizes, the owner internalizes, learns, and improves. Over 20 years, hat difference in response to setbacks is the difference between wealth and struggle. Here's what nobody tells you. You already are the owner of your financial life. You just haven't accepted it yet. Every financial outcome you have is the result of decisions you made or didn't make. Nobody else is responsible. Not your employer, not the economy, not the government, not your parents. You, only you. That's terrifying to accept because it means you can't blame anyone else. But it's also liberating because it means you don't need anyone else's permission to change everything. You're not waiting for authorization. You're recognizing the authority you've always had. You think the big decisions matter most: the house purchase, the car, the job change. And yes, those matter, but you know what act. Usually determines your financial trajectory, the dozen small decisions you make every single week that seem inconsequential. Because small decisions compound just like money compounds. And most people are making small decisions with an employee mentality while wondering why their finances never change despite their big decisions being reasonable. Every morning you decide whether to buy coffee or key it at home. $5 difference. Seems meaningless. Over a year, that's $1,800. Invested at 10% for 30 years, that's $314,000. One small daily decision that feels irrelevant compounds into $350,000. But it's not really about the coffee. It's about the decision-making framework. If you need permission from your mood, your convenience, your desire for comfort to make the financially optimal choice, you'll lose on 1,000 small decisions. If you decide once that you're optimizing for wealth building and then execute that decision, automatically you win on 1,000 small decisions. I've seen people agonize over whether to invest in an index fund or a target date fund, spending months researching the optimal choice. Meanwhile, they're spending $200 a month on subscriptions they don't use, $300 on restaurants when they're not even hungry, $400 on a car payment that's twice what they need. They're optimizing the wrong decisions. They're seeking perfection on investments while running their daily spending like they're financially illiterate. The person who makes NT investment choices and tight spending choices will destroy the person who makes perfect investment choices and loose spending choices. Every single time. Here's the compound effect you're not seeing. Every time you make a decision without thinking, you reinforce the pattern of not thinking. Every time you spend impulsively, you strengthen the impulsivity circuit. Every time you choose convenient, over discipline, you make the next convenience choice easier and the next discipline choice harder. You're not just making one decision, you're programming your default operating system. And most people have programmed themselves to make employee decisions automatically. They seek the path of least resistance, maximum comfort, and minimal responsibility. Then they wonder why their wealth doesn't grow. Flip the script. Every time you make an ownership decision on something small, you reinforce ownership thinking. You're training yourself to think about consequences, to delay gratification, to optimize for future you instead of present you. Make coffee at home and you're not just saving $5. You're casting a vote for the kind of person you're becoming. Do that 50 times and you've cast 50 votes for disciplined decision-making. Your brain starts to default to that pattern. Small ownership decisions compound into automatic ownership thinking. And automatic ownership thinking is what separates people who build wealth from people who stay broke at every income level. You want to know how to stop asking permission? Build systems that make decisions for you, because this the truth, you can't rely on willpower, you can't rely on motivation, you can't make optimal decisions every single time based on how you feel in the moment. You need to decide once, build a system, and let the system execute while you focus on higher-level decisions. This is how owners think. They build machines that run without constant intervention. Here's what this looks like practically. You decide once that 15% of every dollar you earn gets invested automatically. You set up the automatic transfer. Now that decision is made forever. You don't ask yourself each month whether you feel like investing. You don't consult your mood, your expenses, your desire for new things. The system executes. You decided once with an ownership mentality. Now the system implements that Scion thousands of times without requiring permission from your future emotional states. That's leverage. That's how you beat your own psychology. Most people do the opposite. They decide each month whether to invest based on how much is left over, how they feel, what unexpected expenses came up, whether the market looks good. They're making the same decision over and over, which means they're creating infinite opportunities for their employee mentality to override their ownership intentions. And the employee mentality wins most of the time because it's optimized for comfort, not results. Your present self wants comfort. Your future self needs capital. Systems let your ownership decision beat your employee impulses. I've watched people transform their finances not by making better decisions, but by making fewer decisions. They decide once how much to save, once what to invest in, once what their spending boundaries are, once what side income they'll pursue. Then they build systems that execute those decisions automatically. Now they're not using willpower 50 times a month. They're using decision-making capacity once and letting automation do the rest. Their cognitive energy goes to bigger opportunities, not relitigating basic financial behaviors every week. Here's the system that changes everything. Decide your savings rate and automate it. Decide your investment allocation and automate it. Decide your non-negotiable expenses and automate them. Everything left over is discretionary, and you can spend it guilt-free because your ownership obligations are already handled. No. Permission needed, no monthly debate, no willpower required. You made the hard choices once when you had clarity and discipline. Now the system protects you from your own inconsistency. This is how you build wealth on any income. Not by being perfect, by being systematic, not by having iron willpower, by making willpower irrelevant through automation. You stop asking permission from your feelings. Because your systems don't care about your feelings. They execute the decisions your owner self made when you were thinking clearly. Let me tell you what happens when you finally stop asking permission and start making ownership decisions consistently. You don't just build wealth. You build something more valuable than wealth. You build autonomy. You build the ability to look at any situation and know you can handle it because you've proven to yourself that you can make decisions and live with the outcomes. That psychological shift is worth more than any investment return because it changes how you move through the entire world. People who constantly seek permission are imprisoned by other people's timelines, other people's comfort levels, other people's risk tolerance. They can only move as fast as consensus allows. They can only be as ambitious as their most cautious advisor permits. They're living a life designed by committee, and committees don't build wealth. They don't create anything remarkable. They optimize for not being wrong, which means they optimize for mediocrity. You will never build extraordinary wealth with ordinary thinking validated by average. People, here's what I've observed over decades. The moment someone stops asking permission and starts making decisions, their income increases. Not because the decisions are always right, because decisiveness itself is valuable. Employers pay more for people who can make calls under uncertainty. Clients pay more for service providers who take ownership. Markets reward businesses that move quickly. The world compensates decisiveness because decisiveness is rare. Most people are paralyzed by the need for validation. When you're not, you're operating in less competitive space. You're capturing opportunities while everyone else is still forming committees. But the real freedom isn't financial, it's psychological. It's waking up and knowing that your life is a result of your choices, not your CI. Circumstances. It's looking at your bank account and knowing that number is a direct reflection of your decision-making, not your luck or your background. That's terrifying because you can't blame anyone else, but it's liberating because you don't need anyone else's permission to change it. You're not a victim of the economy, the market, your employer, or your past. You're the person making decisions that create your future. Every person reading this has a choice right now. You can keep asking permission, keep seeking validation, keep waiting for perfect information and ideal conditions and consensus approval. And you'll be in the exact same financial position 5 years from now, just older and with fewer years of compound growth available. Or you can decide right now that you're the owner of your financial life. You'll gather information. You'll assess risk. You'll make the best decision you can with what you know. You'll start today. You'll make mistakes. You'll learn. You'll adjust. And 5 years from now, you'll have wealth and experience and confidence that the permission seekers will never have. Not because you were smarter, because you decided you didn't need anyone's approve. To build the life you want. That decision right there is the only permission you actually need. So stop waiting, stop asking, start deciding, start now.